And we're back. The fitness podcast is here. It's a trifecta today, so it's only, oh no, it's dufecta, sorry. It's only me and Emily today instead of Kunal. I missed last week because I was off my face in Ibiza, and then Kunal is missing this week because he's off his face, just ill. So
Eating soothers.
he's smoking soothers.
Smoking soothers.
So we're back today, and we've got an interesting topic. So this one sparked because I did a podcast on the Autonomy Pods about why you can't stick to your diet, and I think it's more important to actually speak about this more often and actually hear other people's opinion. It's often given that dieting is just about willpower and about just doing it, and if you don't want it, you're not good enough, or you don't want it enough, and therefore you never get it. But we know that this is way more multifactorial than actually that element. Willpower is such a small minutia of actually how shit gets done when you're trying to, we call it adherence to a diet, but effectively just stay in a calorie deficit for as long as you can to get the results that you want. That really, opens up a wide door to so many different variables. So what do you think are the biggest variables that you should be considering when you're looking at maybe potentially clients here, or people are listening to this being hard on themselves about not being able to stick to their diet for 7 days a week, 21 days, 28 days, 50 days a week, 50 days a month in total? What are the biggest factors that maybe people aren't considering that are much harder than what people really think is about?
I think that's a really good question, actually, because as we've said before we pressed record, it's such a multifaceted thing that it's very complex, the whole thing about adherence to anything. I mean, obviously we're going to speak broadly about dieting and fat loss, but as in life in general, like what makes us adhere to what and what doesn't make us adhere, like when. So I think a lot of the time it's an overload. It's like almost giving the very easy things to do so much power, and trying to almost make sense of things, as in, why does this have to fit into my, you actually start to like dissect something that's so easy. Like, I need to plan my day in order for it to actually not be something I can't control. If I don't take control, I'm not going to have control. And if I then start to overanalyze it, as in it needs to be perfect, and I need to do, like, instead of making it simple, people make it very complex, right? And I think, I don't know, we do similar things in how we coach, but you give some very on paper easy things to do, like eat 4 meals a day, or whatever it's 3 meals per day, do X amount of steps, drink X amount of water, sleep X amount of hours, or whatever is feasible, like whatever works for the client. And then within that, it's a level of why does it become hard? It's something that I ask myself as well, like, why does it become hard for some people? But I genuinely think that sometimes it's also the expectation of how something should go that doesn't match up with how it needs to happen. And depending on the person who actually enters a program, they might have had experiences, or they might have had expectations of, oh, it needs to be a certain way, and now all of a sudden it's not this way, and therefore it's confusing in my head, so it's hard for me to just take action. But adherence, my God, the only thing is that we don't have willpower that actually helps us in the long term. I don't know how you describe it. It's something that, if you have 100% when you wake up, every conscious decision that you have to make, it's you taking a percentage away from that. And if you've done so many things that you haven't actually pre-planned, you're going to tax out that conscious energy power. And all of a sudden it comes to the afternoon when you exited the amount of energy that you have, and therefore you can't actually rely on willpower anymore. So this is where, having strategies and actually planning in things, and knowing exactly when, not exactly, but have a really good idea of when, so that you just have to take the action. That's for me, adherence is just having a plan, and then having the intention at making that plan work, and the behavioral flexibility in being able to shift a little bit, so that you don't get the whole all or nothing. Fuck, I missed 5 minutes. Now I might as well not do it. Right. So yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
So that for sure. I think that separates probably into two categories. So you got like internal stuff and then you got like external stuff. So like internal stuff does rely on those subconscious behaviors that you already have. We already know that if you've done, let's say for example, it's like the tip of the iceberg. Subconsciously, consciously, you need to do 10,000 steps or be active, but subconsciously, there's so many things that if we, like someone says to you, I need to do 10,000 steps, but you've only done like 4 ever. There are so many other variables that you need to take into consideration that rely on it, that come across as adherence. So like, I would break it down like this. 10,000 steps is a really good example of this. Someone goes, I need to do 10,000 steps. It's like, okay, well, if you don't know when you're going to do it, you're going to need to plan it. Have you got a pair of shoes, like socially economic? Have you got a pair of shoes that you can go walking in? Do you feel safe at night going out for a walk in the mornings or in the evenings? Or do you feel alone in doing that because you don't have any support from your family or the people around you doing the exact same thing? Or you have a low self-esteem to feel like you can't even do 10,000 steps? And do you feel like, when you don't do it in one day, you feel like that is a failure? And I think that's 7 things already in just doing 10,000 steps, that you start getting a consideration that there's more than the meets the eye when it comes to doing these things on a day-to-day basis. And like, I totally understand from that. But like previously, I didn't really understand, and this is just my ignorance, because I would get out and walk at any time of night or any time in the morning. But like, if you don't have people that are around you doing like 10,000 steps, and then you're scared to go out in the evening because as a female you might get catcalled or kidnapped or whatever it is, that could be your, I'm making a joke out of it, but like I'm just
I
laughing.
need to actually, I'm gonna like jump in here with what happened yesterday.
Okay.
Can I?
One second.
Finish it, yeah.
So even if you then miss a day because you're fearful of going out at 9 p.m. at night, then you miss that. Then you've already had that preconception of your expectations that you can be perfect. Second of all, that is a flawed fallacy. And then once you miss a day, you feel like you're worthless. Then you end up in that spin cycle of doubting your own ability, and that relies on training, diet, nutrition. If you miss something, if your self-esteem is so bad, or your behaviors around subconsciously are, oh, it's not worth it, but I can't do it 100%, and your expectations are that you can't have that flexibility in your mindset, then you get set off in that course already to no adherence, just because you can't go out at nighttime because you're fearful, but then because you don't go out at nighttime, you then have the expectations, the behavior that then say you're an idiot or you're a failure. Tell me a story.
Yeah, I want to tell you a story, but I'm going to lose something as well. But this is also the thing with adherence. It's if we have created a rule for what it needs to look like in order for it to be good, and anything that doesn't fit in with that rule, we're going to feel like failures because we created rules, right? So yeah, the whole thing about adherence, it's also the whole thing about opening up that there is plenty of opportunity, and it doesn't have to be that I need to go on 30 minutes walk in the morning. It's like, no, you can maybe go to the store. Like all of a sudden you can open up to like, oh, there's so many ways to get those steps in, rather than it has to be like, I need to block out a whole hour because otherwise I will never get it done. All of a sudden it breaks down that rule of what it needs to look like in order for it to be good, which then makes it lowers the bar of the pressure, so that we can actually just go and do things. And it doesn't, then we don't feel like there's a pressure. And as soon as we raise the pressure, it becomes resistance. So yeah, the story, it was funny. So I was it's actually not that funny. It was fucking scary. For a moment, I felt my sympathetic drive just like, woo. I was walking, and I'm just going to own it. I've been really shit at getting my steps in because I've been just really busy with so many things, and it's just not been my priority. And then the way that my days have ended up being structured, it's like, oh, I got the morning and then I got like after dinner, and it's like, okay, so if I don't do anything early, it means that it feels hard to get 10 in at night, first of all. So my planning is off. I haven't taken a lunch break. All of these things that I can do, because I am in charge of my own schedule, I can block off and there will be no available time in that space and I can do whatever I want. So anyway, yesterday I decided, okay, I need to break this habit. And I used to go for a walk in the morning, and I used to go, if I don't train, and I used to go for a walk in the evening because I like it. It's a way to like detach myself from work. It's actually my evening routine to cool down, to actually allow me to sleep better. So I thought, okay, yesterday I was out, and it's starting to get a little bit darker here again at night. And I was walking, and I live literally by a national park. So on one side of the street we have the houses, and on the other side of the street we have the woods. And I was I was there, and I was going to take up my phone. I was going to do an Instagram story thing where I essentially started talking about, just about a week ago, someone got shot in the neck like 10 minutes away from me. And obviously, I don't know, but we had loads of like killings in the woods, and there's been a lot of killings around in my neighborhood. And I was walking there, I was like, and I was talking about like being a woman, walking in the dark, and not feeling like, refusing to feel, I don't want to feel scared of anything. If I feel scared, I feel like I can't live my life as I want it to be. And so I just said, if whenever my time to go is, it's just going to be that time, and I can't actually change that, right? And I'm like, but I'm not going to be naive, blah blah blah. And all of a sudden I was walking, and I just looking, I didn't actually post this, and I was actually filming, and I just saw the strangest person in the woods. And and that and I got actually scared. I was like, wow, okay, here I am, that actually maybe naive person, then just not paying attention to what's going on around me because I'm on my phone. And I thought it was kind of funny because you mentioned it about actually, yeah, maybe we need to be cautious where and when we go out, and maybe we need to be a little bit more adamant and actually then making it more proactive. So if I always push my steps until the end of the day, it might be that it's getting darker and darker, and therefore I'm always going to be walking in dark. And if I feel unsafe, I need to make a change, right? So yeah, it was just food for thought because it happened yesterday, and it became back to me. And actually I had like when you just like instantly have the adrenaline kicking in, it's like woohoo. So yeah, back to adherence.
Yeah. So like once you look at that tip of the iceberg of just like potentially 6 different factors that can affect just 10,000 steps, you start then transitioning over into like a diet. And like I want to talk about we talked about the internal factors, those factors around about behaviors, around about having rules, around about being 100% or expecting 100% from yourself, or having no flexibility within your ability to fail. They're always going to be there with every single facet of the process of getting in shape, of saving money, of fucking taking medication. From like most of the research that I've done in the last 6 months around adherence has come from medical papers around the ability or the inability for people to take pills or medication or physiotherapy and do the things that they've been asked to do. Even if they're in life-threatening situations, people still don't take the pills that they should do, even in life-threatening situations. It's like, hang on a minute. So you're prepared. So just like you're prepared to go to the doctors because you must be feeling something particularly negative. You're prepared to go to the doctors. You're prepared to get a prescription that will solve your problem, and you're not prepared to take it consistently every day to not feel the pain. And I'm driven by this because I'm triggered by this all of the time for myself because of my knee pain and how I don't take ibuprofen, I don't take paracetamol, and then I'm like, I fucking hate the pain every single day, and it's like it is my fault. And I'm like, what is it? What is the perception of that? And like, I'll just go on that for a minute. So like for me, my perception of like pills and medication is that I'm weaker than everybody else and I shouldn't have to take these things to feel great. And some people's perception, so that's me and that's my own problems, I'm working on that, but like other people have those perceptions in dieting or steps, or I shouldn't have to track my food to lose weight because Mary doesn't do it, or I've never done it before, or I shouldn't have to go and do 10,000 steps because I whatever, or I shouldn't have to change my lifestyle. This is a big one. I shouldn't have to change what I'm doing to get in shape. And then you start thinking about, that's the behavior side of things, what your self-talk is, and then you wonder why when people then like get pain or medication to solve their problem, they still don't take it, because of that unwritten thought in their mind that I'm weaker than everybody else if I take this, or whatnot. And if you have that in some way, shape or form, in a dieting mode, in a steps or an activity mode, when your resistance to change because of your preconception of what that does, that changes adherence completely. I'll only ever take pain medication now when I'm really at death's door with my knee. And then I'm like, well, I could have solved this 3 months ago because it was a steady build up. So therefore, like, what the fuck am I doing? But then that's that preconception. But then when you take it over to external factors that become more of a highlight, if you're not in control of the internal, then these external factors will be more evident and more influencing on your day. Like, we know, like, you can go to a restaurant now and you'll pick what you want on the menu, and you'll have as much drink as you want, or little as you want, or as much dessert as you want, because you're in control of your own beliefs and your own identity. Whereas if you're not in control of those variables internally, when you go to these external things, your peer pressure, your fear of missing out, your thought process about letting other people down, or what will they think about you. You know, I give an example of like the South Asian community that I work with all of the time, is that when they go to social events or they go to people's houses, they have this perception that, and which is right, because the other person does get offended because they're wrapped up in that food tradition of culture, and like, if you don't accept 2 plates of food for me, I get offended. Fuck those people anyway. But like, when they go there, they think that they are so fearful of letting the other person down, or they're so fearful of offending someone, that they change what they wanted to do to mold that other person. And then when you're looking at adherence on top of that, you know, we know that calorie deficit is calorie deficit. We need to eat less, or potentially less, to get the fat loss we want. Then by molding yourself to other individuals, you're at the mercy of the food that they give you. You're at the mercy of their will, which ends up being then a non-adherence. It becomes you just do what they want because you want to keep them happy. And that influence is on us every single time. You know, you might have one friend, like, you know, let's say for example we go out for dinner and I say, no, I'm dieting. You won't be like, oh yeah, we'll fucking have a dessert. You'll be like, cool, what do you need to do? Where do we need to go? Whereas people don't have those friends like that, right? They just have the other person pushing their own values on them. And if you don't have that internal strength and identity to say, no, this is me, and practice it, then that becomes a massive influencing factor when it comes to adherence in the environment that you're in. And that will play out in dinners, it'll play out in drinks, it'll play out in coffee walks with your friends, because they might be like, oh, should we get a Danish pastry, or should we get a sandwich while we're here, or should we go, or weddings or social events in that course as well. And that all wraps up into external factors that why you can't. And if you don't control those, you'll never be able to control calorie intake, which then makes it even more difficult, not only from a dieting perspective, but how the hell are you going to maintain your body weight for a period of time in a range without controlling these variables to the best of your ability.
Yeah. No, I agree. You know, if we're gonna talk like NLP for a second, the way that we can also look at problems, or where we need to change, is because we have levels where we have problems, and we need to actually solve the problem at what level it is. And I think oftentimes we go for surface level solutions because we believe that that's where the problem is, but the problem always lies a little bit higher up than that. So if we're going to go down like what the levels are, we first have problems in your environment. You know, is your environment set up for you to actually do a diet? Do you keep a lot of shit in your house? Because if you have guests maybe coming over once a month, or you know what I mean? So like, what does your environment actually allow you to do? And does it support you in what you want to do? It's obviously like the lowest level, where a lot of people start and they go, well, if I just throw out all of the sweets, then my problem is gone. But you know that it's a little bit more than that, right? The second level of that's going to be, what's your behaviors like, you know, and then that comes into, you know, what am I doing when I get stressed? What am I doing when I have cravings? What do I do when I feel hungry? What do I, you know, so we can actually look at then like, what are my normal behaviors around then food, if this is the case. But then the problem here is also, if we go on even a higher level, we have then the capabilities, you know, what do I believe I am capable of doing. Do I know how to cook? I can't cook. That's a belief system that then it's a limiting belief system that doesn't allow you to actually learn the skill of cooking. Because maybe I hate cooking. Well, that's if you hate cooking, how engaged are you going to be in the process of learning how to take better care of your health? Because they tie together. You're going to have the capabilities for what you're trying to achieve, right? But maybe then also just go, all right, in order for me to do this, I acknowledge that I now need to learn how to season. I need to know how to compose my meals, so that obviously we have coaches now that helps us with that actually helps us with some of the capabilities and the knowledge, but we still need to start to work on our capabilities. And if we can fix something, the lower levels actually they vanish, right? Because all of a sudden we have the level at the problem where it is, it kind of cancels out the lower levels as well. But on top of the capabilities, obviously that's what I said, we have belief system, our values. And I really think that here a lot of problems actually lie. And if we actually look into values, then we can see that there can be conflicting values. And we go back to the Asian culture then, because we have to look at values. If I have a hierarchy of values where I actually operate from, and I make decisions based on what I think is important in life. And if I have health coming down at 7 and family and respect is coming out at the top, I'm always going to choose to please my family with respect before I focus on my health. So how we look at our values is super important, because if they don't align, and if I can't see that I need to work on my value of health so that I can see that it works, which then asking maybe better questions. If I don't do this, how long will I be alive for, to be with my family? How long will I actually have energy to play with my kid? How long, so if we ask better questions, we can actually link them together and see the value in putting health higher, because it gives us the time with the family. It gives us time in life, right? And then if I start to value health, I start to actually change my belief around it. Actually health isn't that hard, because I think a lot of people have the belief as well that health is hard. It's not hard. It's just that you have to have a belief system that values that is perfect and or that it's important. Because if you do, you gather the capabilities, and if you have the capabilities, you're going to do the behaviors. And if you have the behaviors, your environment is going to actually align with that. So, but if we go higher on that level, we actually have identity. Who am I? What do I identify as? If I don't identify as someone who is healthy, or someone who's aspiring to be healthy, or I can see that I'm working towards being that, I can still take on the identity of a healthy person, even if I have an unhealthy body. And if I solve my problem on an identity level, again, all of those lower levels, they will go away. Which is why you and we don't have the issue with going into diets or doing it, because it doesn't change our identity. It's already aligned. All we do is to just look at our behaviors a little bit more in detail, or maybe look at our environment. We only buy wholesome foods. We stay away from maybe going to Papa John's instead of going to, I don't know, a salad at Nando's instead. We have that, right? So I think if we can look at it that way as well and go, okay, but are we always going to scratch the surface? We're never actually going to get to that root cause. We're not actually going to solve that problem. And we're always going to be in the cycle of, I'm back and now I need to do it again. I'm going to blame my environment, and I'm going to say, but I can't do it. It's not possible. It's not for me. Yeah, but there is another level, which is essentially, I guess, your purpose, right? What am I here for? What is my part? Why is it? What will health actually give me in my greater? Like now, it's not even about me anymore. Like by me being healthy, but by me being healthy, how will that affect the rest of my family, my friends, my work, my whatever I believe in? How does that align with my purpose? And all of a sudden, again, when we are at our highest, when we have the purpose, we come back to purpose sometimes, right? And when we have the purpose, fucking hell, nothing else matters. That, right? All of a sudden, it's like there's no question about doing something.
Yeah.
because
Why wouldn't
it's
I do it?
why,
That's
yeah,
what happens, right?
why would I not do it? It's
Yeah.
like it becomes that you flip the coin, and instead of going, but why do I have to do it? It's like, why wouldn't I not do it? And it becomes so much more powerful. But this is the thing. I think we need to learn to recognize where the problem lies. I mean, obviously, if we all can go straight to purpose, we'll all be sorted forever. But sometimes, if we feel like it's the environment's fault, well, we can just start with changing the behavior. If we feel like it's something in our behavior, let's look at the skills that we have, break it down. If you say I can't cook, well, break it down. In order for you to make an omelette, you need to know how to crack an egg. You need to put it in a bowl, you need to whisk it up, you need to put on a pan, and all of a sudden you go, actually, I have a bit of capabilities here. And from there you build up your self-efficacy. And when you have self-efficacy, you dare to do a little bit more. It's like, oh, I'm going to buy a cookbook and I'm going to follow a recipe.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's a development, right? And as you do that, you start to move upwards, right? So that's how I look at it anyway.
That is the fucking most eloquent way that I've heard adherence been spoke about. So fair fucks on that one. That was brilliant. And I'm going to break down the but I think the thing that you mentioned about self-efficacy, but also were you questioning the behaviors. So the question I now bring to myself and bring also my clients to get to a further cause is like, it's like that thing, right? Whether you ask yourself a question or you're talking to yourself or you ask other people, it's like ask a good question, get a good answer. Ask a shit question, you get a shit answer. And it's like the whole thing of like, okay, someone goes, but I can't cook. It's like, okay, what part of cooking can't you do? And then someone goes, oh, I can't do eggs on toast. It's like, okay, what part of eggs on toast can't you do? And then those questions, just then you answer that one and you're good. Because once happens is that you go, I can't get the eggs to be nice. Okay, then you can solve that problem. Is it a seasoning problem? Is it a cooking problem? Then you've already got down to the rabbit hole that you needed
Or
to.
you ask the rule, what makes an egg nice?
Yeah.
What is it about it that needs to be nice? Is it that it has to be perfect, or do you still enjoy it if it's overcooked or undercooked, or And all of a sudden it's like I've created a problem in my head because I've had a belief system, and now I'm supporting it with something that I just said I can't do this, and then all of a sudden if I break that down and go, actually, I like my eggs in all the ways.
Yeah.
Fertilized.
That's my favorite one. That's my dad's favorite.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I'd throw that one in there.
But do you know, and then the most important thing out of all of this is once you realize all of these facets that do play an impending factor in why you do what you do and how you don't do what you do, is that in order to create that change, it needs challenge. So let's take, for example, that volume. What you said about them when you value your family's appreciation or welcoming,
Respect, or yeah,
or
whatever.
respect. You
Yeah.
value your family's respect over your ability to get in shape yourself. That has to go through challenge to create that. I'm working with the South Asian community, that they're not afraid to speak their mind, right? So the thing is that you're going to need to be able to confront that specific thing and let it go and do the own thing that you want to anyway. But it won't come through just like sneaking around or doing it outside of the house or only making good decisions when your parents aren't there or whatever it is. Or when you're at the event or not going to the event at all. Like, people will avoid events to not be criticized by what they choose when they're eating, because they'd rather not go and face that conflict. But actually, conflict is absolutely essential. If you're to change your values and you're to change your perception, even the other person's perception, by having that conflict, you change both sides. You talk to them about how you want to do these specific values and specific things that will help you. They get to have that confrontation back and say, well, why do you want to do that? Why is this important? What the fuck are we doing? Like, not having sauce on every meal, or we're not having dessert. Why are we doing that? That's stupid. But then you come back and you reinforce your ways. You reinforce why it's important to you. You reinforce why that thing needs to happen. You then strengthen your own beliefs by going through that conflict. But then the other person in that environment then also gets to understand that, and then they get to kind of they will mold themselves as well, because if they're true friends or they're true family, they may take a while to get over it, that the fact is that you're not eating fucking 12 rotis with every single meal, and that you're maybe cooking your own food now. But over time, they will get used to that. They'll see the change that you make, and they'll be asking you for advice.
Yeah. And
that conflict is key, right?
but also just to chip in there, like when there's a conflict, the other side of that, the receiving side of your changes, you're just trying to, you have to understand that they have a positive intent behind wanting you to remain where you are, because they might think that you're actually good enough. And obviously you might also spark an insecurity within themselves, where they might not have the belief system and the well, belief that they actually can change themselves. Or maybe they are struggling themselves with what they want but seem to not be able to get. Maybe they've gone through the process themselves plenty of times in their life, and they've just kind of given up because they think it's never going to work for me. So obviously we can trigger other people by taking action for what we want, because they might not feel like they could have it. So it's like we're pushing the buttons of other people and their insecurities about themselves, which then manifests in them, in a way, just want you to be remaining where you are because that's where they are. So yeah, but then also understanding that a lot of people have a positive intent behind why they say and why they do. Well, some people are vicious, let's just put it that way. But you know, the other day over the weekend, I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to actually be better with my diet. I'm going to cut out all the shit. And so I became the chauffeur. How do you call it? The driver. I was the driver for my mom and her partner when they went to a wine tasting. And I just jokingly said, "Oh, so you didn't get me any sweets for staying at home, waiting for you guys to pick you up." And then that was a joke, by the way, for me. Like, I don't know if it was a joke. It was a subconscious wish that came forward. But anyway, so I drove them there. And when they went into the store, they also got me like 3 bags of sweets. Positive intention, good intention from their side, obviously not aligning with what I want to do. So I think that's the thing. We also have to recognize that people, they have good intentions. They want to treat you. They want you to feel good. And if that's what you've done up until this point, you've always said yes. You say yes to cake. You love cake. You're always the first one, take the first bite, like, and all of a sudden you're the one saying no. They still believe that in order for you to be happy, you should have the cake, right? So it is like you have to see it from 2 perspectives, your own and theirs, and then and respect and appreciate them for where they are. And without trying to trigger them, you will trigger them if they want to be triggered, because that's the thing, people who get triggered will get triggered. But then also go, but what is important to me, and how can I maintain what I want without being a dickhead about it? Because I don't have to talk about it all the time. Like, I can be there and I can, with my actions, say no thank you, and I'll stick with my thing. And if people ask you, like, I genuinely think we don't always have to tell everyone all the, like, what exactly it is that I'm doing. I can tell you why I do it and why it's important to me, but let's not just get crazy about the details for some people unless they ask.
Yeah.
Right. But I know when I did my first diet, it was very much like, I do this and I do that and did this. And it's like, and then people go, you sound a little bit neurotic. Are you okay? Right. And all of a sudden it becomes like you start doubting. It's like, oh, but maybe I am obsessive. This is the thing as well. Like, and if you want something, whether it's fat loss or if it's a business growth or whether it's whatever, you have to become a little bit obsessed about it until it becomes second nature. Right. So that's the thing.
And
Yeah.
a good example when you're bringing it back to before the obsessive stuff is obviously the other people's best intentions, which it always comes back of. And like, I always bring it back to like the South Asian market and people. So like, you know, let's say for example you live with your parents, and let's say you're mid-20s and you're trying to make some change, but you're living at home and you're eating the food that your mum's given you, which is very, very common. And the thing is that for the last maybe 15 years of maybe 20 years of your life, She has been the provider for you of food and been the person that has nourished you and took pride in making great meals and nourishment for you, because she probably gave up her job to nurture you and, be your mother.
No, she
And
gave up her fucking body to make,
yeah, she
actually
busted you out
count
of
a
that
knife.
VV hard. And by busting you out of that VV and providing
And
you,
all of a sudden you're ungrateful old brat saying, no,
yeah,
thanks, mom.
what do you mean you got you my food? I fucking brought you out of my womb, son. But it's like, that's exactly how they feel, because that's the attachment that they've had. Their
Yeah.
job was to nourish you, keep you safe, and make sure you don't die when you're fucking being stupid, until you're able to fly upon your own. And that'll still be in your 20s. And then when you say, and for that, her best intentions, I'm just going to use her for that best intentions, but her best intentions is to nourish you the best way that she can, the best way she knows, the best way the culture and what she's brought up with does. So then when you go against that and say, actually, no, I'm not going to eat that, of course she's going to feel butthurt. Of course she's going to feel like it's a violation, because that was her job and that was her role. And then going even deeper, if that's the only thing she's been doing, let's say, for example, if she didn't go back to work, if her job is to stay in the house and she's cooking and cleaning and looking after the family, but then her main priority and purpose, as we spoke about, is to look after the family. And that's one of her core values, is like, I'm going to make sure that they're fed and watered, they're eating what they need to, they don't need to worry about that. And then you're now like, I don't need this anymore, like, your food's shit because it's making me fat. Then that's what she'll think, and that's what she'll hear. And then of course that visceral response will be to kind of move back into challenge mode. So like you've got to see it on both sides. And it's very, very common. Even I spoke on a podcast about like my dad's response of when I tried to do my first diet when I was 16. He'd cooked and he cleaned. He was the guy, he was like a little housewife compared to my mum. My mum was the breadwinner. And then he'd come in and be like, I'd be like, oh, can we cook some different foods? Because I'm trying to lose a bit of weight. He's like, what's wrong with my food? And like, your food's great. It's got protein in, it's got sauce, it's got veggies, it's got potato, rice, whatever you need. And he was like, no, I'll do it. So basically, for periods of time, he would try and cook me quote unquote less calorie or healthier foods. And like one time I see him put the olive oil, drizzle it over the top. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're putting extra 300, 400 calories on my meal. Because he would just do this with the food. In terms of on the video, I'm just like waving the wand of olive oil like everyone does. Straight in the mouth. And basically by doing that, we had that conflict. And he was like, well, if you don't fucking like it and you don't think mine is good enough, then you fucking do it yourself. And
Yeah.
that was his visceral response. But what that actually meant was that, he'd spent an hour cooking every day and he was responsible for that thing. And then I've now told him that wasn't good enough for someone that didn't come out of his womb, but he was part of, is
You
very
came out
much.
of him first, though.
Pardon?
You came out of him first.
Yeah. I thought I was always lowering the tone, but you got that one. And then that's the crux of it, right? Because their best intentions to keep you safe, fed and watered, and then you're going against that in some way that they don't understand, but also don't believe, because they don't know what they don't know. So
Yeah.
that's why adherence is so hard in those external facets. Friends are very, very similar. Family members will be very similar. Home life will be very similar, because unless you grow up in the environment of that, this is what protein is, this is a quote unquote healthy meal, this is a low calorie meal, this is a high calorie meal, this is what we do as habits. When that change comes, it just doesn't change for you, it changes for everybody around you, which then causes the resistance or the change to people's perception.
Yeah. So adherence, to sum it up, it's
Not
fucking
easy.
complicated.
Yeah.
No, but it isn't willpower. It is actually to look at values, it's looking at, but also ownership of my time, because it is a lot of time. Once you understand all of this thing, you still need to take ownership of the time and the tasks and allocate it accordingly, and actually go, right, if I work 10 hours a day and I try to sleep for 7 or 6, what do I do with the rest of those? How do I fit all of these things in? When do I do it? And then how can I optimize my time so that I don't spend 1 hour every day cooking, if that's something that I can't feasibly, like, that's when we'd start become more proactive in finding solutions that will maximize the time that we have or optimize it. But it still comes back to, if you're going to do a sustainable transformation that lasts you for life, it comes back to that thing about adherence and looking at it as a holistic thing. Like, what is this meaning for my life, and how do I need to address it in the times when it's not so easy to maintain what I'm trying to do. And then having a bit of behavioral flexibility. Like, there's nothing wrong with eating your mom's food, but if you do it every day, 3 days a week, 3 meals a day, and it's always really calorific, well, you're going to not see the results. You will stay where you are. What did Einstein say?
You keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's insanity.
Exactly. So we also do have to go, all right, what is my responsibility to change here? And then go with it. I thought this was a really good podcast.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think we should do part 2.
Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about, I think.
Yeah, like we've just covered now probably the bits that are unseen, or like the challenges that most people will face that they don't think is challenges. They just think is like people being difficult or them not being good enough, which changes that whole behavioral subset. But there's a whole side of it which is about finding the way to diet that's right for you and your circumstances, which I think will be really, really good to go in. Like, not everybody needs a meal plan, not everybody needs tracking, not everyone needs MyFitnessPal. How do you adhere to something that you don't know is right for you, and going through the process of understanding about what practices that you need to undertake every day, probably to get fat loss, but also keep it off in the long term. And then once you combine those two parts, you understand that change needs to happen globally across the people that you're with, and then the challenge that will come with that, and then managing that in terms of your values, priorities, behaviors, actions, thoughts. And then you move to the other side of like strategy, intent, execution, and then finding something that's right for you and the way that you work, live, and breathe. Then you can combine those two together to be way more adherent.
Yeah.
Bars.
Right. I'm back to eating my dry fruit now. Why my diet hasn't worked.
And I'm on 1100 calories and I've dropped 3 kilos this week.
You're not on 1100.
Yeah, I dropped it down.
Fuck my life.
I'm trying something new. So let's go into this. I'm trying something new. I'm trying low as long as I can. Then I go up for a bit. Then I come back down again. And it seems to be working really, really well. I've chipped off like 5 kilos in like 4 weeks. And that's obviously traveling from Miami to the UK to Ibiza back here. And it just works that when I'm in those high states of the travel, I get to enjoy a bit more food. But then on days that I'm not, I just have enough to sustain me, but you don't feel the hunger because you've had the high days. So it's really interesting because like you're running on full effectively for, a couple of days or 5 to 7 days, and then or 10 days, and then you're having another high day in 14 days anyway. So like, it's just, for me, it's like, I'm not going to track calories when I'm in Miami, or I'm not going to track calories when I'm in Dubai for when I'm starting there, and definitely not if I'm going to go to Mexico, and definitely wasn't going to do in Ibiza. So I can make use of the days that I've got here, or when it's stable, to eat minimal. And then on those days, then you can have a bit more, as long as it's not like my rule is if I start like fantasizing about the food that I'm going to eat on the other days, then I need to bring calories up. But at the moment in time, it's been really, really good to just even out the ability not to track and just have nice times with nice meals and stuff like that. So
but let's just put the little side note there that you already then have a plan in place. You see your future. You haven't just put yourself on a very low caloric thing and you just say, well, I'll stay here until whenever, right? It's like you already know when, what, how you're going to increase that food.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say I'm happily dropping on 1700, and that's that's me. I'm the more consistent, regular, steady one.
Yeah, and I'm the person that just likes to eat dinner out and like be able to have a few glasses of wine if you want to on 1 or 2 days. But like Monday to Friday, I'm busy anyway, so you might as well make use of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, we'll come back with part 2, guys. If you did like this episode, we would love to hear some feedback. We would love to get some reviews, and we would love to hear if you have any questions and if there's anything that sparked a thought. Nathan, say goodbye.
Yalla Habibi.